around the EU Migration Pact, and over 160 civil society organisations stated that this will have a detrimental effect on migrants' rights across the European Union. So I'd like to hear your thoughts.
Thanks, Deputy, and thank you for raising this question. We've just had, I think, good debate and a number of questions at the Joint Justice Committee on this very matter. I'll start by assuring the Deputy that I am keenly aware that the right to asylum is a fundamental right in the EU. It's granted by the Treaty and the Charter of Fundamental Rights and confirmed by the proposal under the Pact on Migration and Asylum. The EU Asylum and Migration Pact will ensure that Europe acts as a collective in terms of how migration and in particular asylum is managed to ensure the system is firmer, but also that it continues to be fair. Protections in relation to fundamental rights for international protection applicants are provided for throughout the process, with additional safeguards for children and unaccompanied children, including legal representation and a multidisciplinary age assessment. Additional safeguards have also been incorporated in relation to families with minors to ensure their processing is prioritised once admitted into the border procedure, and that they always reside in facilities that comply with the Reception Conditions Directive. Of course, the people of Ireland are deeply conscious of our moral and legal responsibilities to those who are fleeing war and persecution. The Pact will accelerate the processing of international protection applicants. Those that are entitled to international protection will be granted it, and it will make it easier to return those who are found not to be entitled to protection. It will introduce greater security checking of applicants. It will reduce the volume of secondary movement, make it easier to transfer applicants to Member States responsible. It will reduce the time frame that people spend in state-provided accommodation and support the return of people not to be entitled to protection. The Pact has therefore been designed to establish a common approach to migration and asylum that is based on solidarity, on responsibility and, importantly, respect for human rights. And that will not change if we opt into it, and when I hope that we do opt into it. This is about making sure that those who genuinely need our protection, that they can access it. And I think, just to a point that has been raised with me earlier, just because the system is condensed or made faster, that the rights of individuals are not in any way impacted here. People's individual rights will be protected, even if it is through an accelerated procedure or a quicker procedure, which is obviously being proposed in this directive.
Thank you, Minister. Deputy.
Thanks, Minister. I think there's been lots of commentary in relation to this pact. Those on the left that will be voting against it in the European Union, and those on the far right that will be voting against it for very different reasons. And I think the issue of asylum and finding sanctuary in the European Union has been tainted well before this, and you know, the toxic mix of xenophobia, hatred and division is being stoked up by those on the far right that are trying to whip up division, not only in Ireland but also across the European Union. And I believe this pact erodes the fundamental pillars of the European Union, which is one of human rights, and I think this really degrades human rights in terms of immigrants' rights, in terms of coming to the European Union.
Minister.
Deputy, I suppose you could say the fact that there are people on the extreme left and right with opposing views that we're somewhere in the middle, and that we may have gotten it somewhat right. But I just want to assure you, Deputy, and I speak on my own behalf, but I think for the vast majority of people in this country, we are and have always been a welcoming country, and I believe our colleagues and our friends and our member states across the EU are very much in that space as well. But we need to make sure that we have a system that works. We have a system that's fair to those who genuinely need it, but also those who don't have a right to apply for asylum, who are actually creating a backlog and creating challenges for those who genuinely need to access protection. We have to have a system that protects them, supports them, but that also creates the legal pathways and the legal routes. While the Migration and Asylum Pact is specifically looking at those seeking international protection, we are developing it and working it hand in hand with other measures that the EU is very much focused on. That's looking at the root causes of why people are moving, looking at how we can have greater levels of legal migration. I mean, we're a country where we have full employment. We need more people to come here and work. So there are a number of other things that we need to be doing and that we are doing, working collectively to try and address the need that people have to come here.
Thank you, Deputy.
I agree, Minister. I think Ireland is a very welcoming place, and let's hope it stays that way. But when you drill down on this pact, you see a semblance of, for want of a better word, internment of adults and sometimes children. Human rights advocates are saying that migration and the is being weaponised by those that, you know, want to malign migrants coming into the European Union. And I think that's a bad day for human rights, particularly in the European sense. And I think this is a kind of a dangerous crossroads, Minister, in terms of rights of everybody in the European Union. And as I said, the basic pillar of the European Union back in the 50s was, you know, rights of everybody, regardless of where you come from, regardless of what your colour, your skin is. But I believe this pact is a kind of a backward step in terms of human rights for everybody that wants to come to the European Union to work.
Thank you, Deputy Minister.
I suppose it's important to be clear that we're not proposing to detain people. While we will have a border procedure where specifically people coming through that procedure will be in specific accommodation, but they won't be detained. We won't have fences up. We won't have people in a prison type facility. That's not what we're proposing here, and I don't think that's what we should ever be proposing. But we do have to have structure. We do have to have a system that works. And if we don't have a system that can process people quickly, that can get through applications quickly, that can identify quickly who needs our help, then it's much harder to get to those who genuinely do. It is, of course, the case that people will seek to come to Ireland, to seek to come to the EU for economic reasons, and that's why it's really important that we have separate routes and separate mechanisms for them to do that, and there are separate conversations that are happening, but very much in parallel with this. But this is about those seeking asylum, and if you have a system that does not protect those seeking asylum, you know, we're not fulfilling our obligations, but that's the pact itself does not erode people's rights. It does not erode people's ability to apply for asylum. It just makes sure that we can do it in a more efficient and a more effective way, and I think that benefits those who are genuine.
Thank you, Deputy Pat Daly.